97% of the 298 diagnosable disorders currently listed in the DSM are scientifically invalid. But it's not the invalidity in and of itself that is the problem. The real problem is the purpose that this invalidity was intended to serve and how it is part of the strategic design to cover up the most dangerous personality disorder of mankind by rebranding psychopathy not once, but twice, to intentionally create a blind spot for society that has put society in a greater risk for danger, in which the seriousness of this should not be underestimated. And by the end of this video, you will understand why. As we unfold the truth that for decades has been carefully hidden between the pages of the DSM, the so-called Bible of psychiatry, protected by layers of misinformation, misconceptions, confusion, and contradictions, to cover up entire systems of corruption and to have control over public's perceptions that in the 70s started to take quite a shift, being in the brink of what has come to be known as the golden age of serial killings, crimes, and cause, and taking psychopathy and mental illness altogether from something that many knew little about to becoming the headline topic in every form of mass media, and the characteristics of psychopathy now something that most were becoming quite familiar with due to the media's extensive coverage on some of the most heinous and disturbing crimes ever committed that suddenly seemed to have started to take place like clockwork. In '69, there was Charlie Manson and his cult, murdering actress Sharon Tate and 9 others, right alongside the Zodiac killer's string of murders and the bizarre cryptic letters to taunt the police. In '72, Ted Bundy began his killing spree, the same year marking the start of John Wayne Gacy's span of 33 murders, to which he buried many within the crawl space of his basement. And well, let's not forget about the son of Sam terrorizing New York City, claiming to be under the command of a demonic dog. And it's really no shocker that amidst all of the serial killings and individuals possessed by some demonic version of Scooby-Doo created quite a jolt in the fear factor department amongst the general public. And as such, when incidents such like the assassinations of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy in '68, then in '69, Fred Hampton, the leader of the Black Panther Party, was executed in his sleep at the hand of the FBI during an arranged raid that they had conducted. The Attica prison riots in '71, the most corrupt display of police brutality ever caught on record, resulting in law enforcement killing 39 during a staged protest, followed up in '72 by the infamous Watergate scandal that Nixon's administration tried covering up, which clearly, sure the fuck, didn't earn Nixon, his administration, or the government any brownie points in regaining the trust or rebuilding a sense of security amongst the general public. And the more details started to unfold about the scandal, deliberate lies and cover-ups started raising suspicion and questions of concern for many as they were recognizing these patterns of behavior and characteristics in some of the most powerful and elite political figures, law enforcement, and FBI agents that were remarkably similar to those described by the media, such like Ted Bundy, leading to the government's collaboration with the APA and making their first attempt at trying to salvage the reputation of political figures with their enactment of the Goldwater Rule in '73, forbidding psychiatrists from offering their professional opinion or participating in any discussions on any form of mass media about the mental state of politicians. Unfortunately, due to the APA's anything but coincidental timing of their enactment of this rule that was based off of and named after Senator Barry Goldwater from an incident that had transpired 9 years prior, yet now, suddenly, just a few months after the break-in at the national headquarters, this rule gets enacted effective immediately. And since most saw through this thinly veiled gag order, it only led to many becoming appalled at the organization's willingness to put society at a potential risk of danger due to the power play at hand. Thus, this was quickly followed up by their second attempt in '74, marking the first steps in preparation for the megalodon of deception that would eventually come to shake up the world of psychiatry, with the APA nominating Dr. Robert Spitzer to be chair of the task force in the creation of the DSM-3. That in record timing, with just a little over a year and a half after signing this task force, Spitzer and his team produced the first draft. In '77, the field trials began, and in 1980, the DSM-3 was published for release, including nearly 100 new mental disorders, as well as changes, alterations, or adjustment to many of the descriptions previously described in the DSM-2. Not only changed the language of mental health and how mental health was viewed, but it was presented as what would revolutionize psychiatry. And well, it definitely was revolutionary in how it created enormous professional and financial incentive for the APA, the NIH, insurance and pharmaceutical companies, psychiatrists, and the government. But as for science, the obvious lack of research and validity, repetitive overlaps, comorbidities, as well as the concern about influence from the government. The only thing was revolutionary about this was the amount of conflict and controversy that arose from it, with some of the biggest issues and areas of concern being that of the cluster B personality disorders, in particularly with the adjustments made to antisocial personality disorder, or psychopathy, and inclusion of NPD, making its first debut into the world of personality disorders. But as I stated earlier, this was no coincidence any more than its inclusion, along with many of the others, being based off of new findings, empirical evidence, or had anything to do with science at all. It definitely helped to aid in how the DSM rebranded psychopathy, dividing it now into two separate disorders. ASPD for the criminals, attaching to it the more behavioral external factors, including specific crimes, rules, and social norms that these individuals commonly broke, along with their having had a history of conduct disorder as a child. Also highlighting that these individuals likely do not have the capacity or ability to succeed in politics or business due to their educational shortcomings, more or less excluding anyone in a high-ranking political or public position from now being speculated on for having antisocial personality disorder. And NPD was for the criminals who didn't get caught, attaching to it more of the personality traits that had been listed in the previous DSM, with a lacking of empathy, manipulativeness, inflated sense of importance, and a sense of entitlement, a need for power and control, who blame others or rationalize their behaviors. Also highlighting that these individuals are very prone to taking leadership positions such as politicians, lawyers, CEO, or head of a company. And why this makes such a difference, at least in way of the eyes of the public, regardless of the fact that the description of NPD isn't exactly a delight to be around, that you'd want to go seek out to become your new roommate or partner, but it's still separating it from the human predator component of it, which becomes a shit ton less nerve-wracking to think of a political or high-ranking individual or someone with a lot of power over a nation through this new narcissistic lens than someone whose traits and characteristics are remarkably similar to individuals who are repeatedly killing people and then dismembering or eating their remains. And now, as long as there's no criminal background, instead of seeing someone who is just as equally a human predator, sees them now as being more of some self-absorbed jerk, which wasn't just a deliberate rebranding of evil. It was a deliberate manipulation of the meaning of words to create a blind spot for society about the true nature of psychopathy, to which is one of the basic tools and most effective manipulative tricks in the book. Because when you are in control of what words mean, you too are in control of the people that use them. And by assuring that this message is conveyed in a way that appears like it has scientific evidence backing it and is being administered by figures of authority, well then most will accept this meaning without even realizing what is happening. And nobody knows this better than organizations such like that of the APA, the NIH, as well as the government, who not only acquire data, conduct research, and study human behavior, but they also are the gatekeepers as who has access to this research. What studies get approved, what studies get published, and what studies are considered to be valid, reliable data. And therefore, knowing damn well many of the diagnoses listed in the DSM were in fact not valid. As for one, the time frame that these took place, legitimately impossible to have been able to have conducted enough valid, reliable research to have added these disorders, as well as knowing just how effective manipulation works as they train their CIA, military intelligence, law enforcement agencies for interrogation purposes, just as much as the government and the APA are fully aware of the dangers of a psychopath. They know how dangerous it is, and they also know that if the public is fully aware, that it would change everything, because it's not necessarily the criminality aspect of it that makes these people so dangerous. What makes them so dangerous within the combination of their willingness to go to such extremes, or what gives them this killer instinct, in the sense that they will do whatever it takes to get the job done, to see to it that they win, that they stay on top, that they maintain control, power, domination, and get ahead of whatever it is that they are seeking out to get or feel that is going to benefit them, as well as they're having this superficial charm, inflated sense of self-importance and entitlement, a lack of empathy, their manipulativeness, avoid responsibility and accountability, are morally bankrupt, and genuinely do not care who they hurt, take down, or life they destroy, be that in means of destroying someone physically, psychologically, financially, or socially. They will not only do it without batting an eyelash, but they will not have an ounce of guilt or remorse for their actions. That unlike any other disorder, person affected isn't them. It's those that they abuse, that they manipulate, that they use, and that they intentionally and deliberately destroy. That manuals such like this, with trying to hide the true nature of how dangerous these individuals are, not only puts others at risk in thinking that they aren't so bad, it enables them to continue and have caused more devastation and despair amongst society than any other disorder combined. These organizations, just as much as we have seen them do it, such like that to Hitler, Stalin, as well as people like Eddie Bernays, President Nixon, Senator McCarthy, and the list goes on and on. Not all of them are criminal in the sense that they are out killing others, but they are absolutely criminal in all aspects of the word. And they don't need to kill people to make them dangerous any more than you need a diagnosis to know when you're dealing or looking at pure evil in the eyes. Most don't ever get diagnosed or even step foot in a psychiatrist's office. And as hard as it is to believe or want to believe that this kind of evil exists, these monsters are absolutely real. They aren't the ones, though, under your bed or in your closet, because they're the ones lying next to you, or the ones that are tucking you in. You don't see them coming because they are already there. And there is nothing more terrifying than that. And to downsize, undermine, or try to protect these individuals is more dangerous than you even can imagine. And as a result, victims end up getting blamed, shamed, or silenced, saying that they're being judgmental by tossing these labels around. The only problem with these labels is that they keep fucking with them in order to keep people confused. But really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many times they want to split it up, call them comorbidities, subsets, or rename them altogether. The true nature and the insidious, malevolent, vindictive behaviors of these individuals doesn't change, and no amount of love, empathy, or compassion is going to fix that. There ain't enough in this world because they do not appreciate those things in the first place. They do not see you as a person. They will take your pity and your compassion and use it as weapons against you, just as the DSM has been used as a tool of manipulation and weapon against society. And it's a damn shame. And it's about time that we wake up, because ignorance is not bliss when it comes to dealing with these people. Knowledge is power. And those who think that this is over exaggerated or that these people really aren't as bad as others say, let me ask you this. If you had a hunch, whether they were diagnosed or not, would you want to hire them on to be an au pair to take care of your child, or even just to live under the same roof? I'm going to guess probably not. And if you did, well, you might want to think about that twice, because I assure you, they are not the type of people that you want to fuck around and find out with. They're the type of people that you want to get up and run the fuck away from, because ain't nothing warm, fuzzy, or good coming from that. So stay aware. Focus on you. Fuck the narcissist, or whatever you want to call them.